Today we're going to hear from John Laine, who started in real estate almost 20 years ago. During the '08 crash, he lost almost $80 million worth of real estate. He's got a lot to share with us, and there's some parallels in today's market that we're going to want to watch out for. Check it out. All right, John, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Really excited to have you on board.
Chad, I am super jazzed to be here. I'm a little nervous, but I'm happy to be here, honestly, truly.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've got an incredible story. I don't think there's any reason to be nervous. I'm really excited because I met you through our mutual mastermind group, Raise Masters, which we both will agree is amazing.
Yeah.
And you're one of the rare investors, because these days, like, it seems like everyone's getting into real estate, and last 5 years everyone's kind of jumped in, but you're one of the rare guys that's actually been around longer and doing investments longer. And I was hoping maybe we could dive back into the 2008 timeframe, not to bring back too many bad memories, but you had an incredible portfolio. And look, I hate to say it, but you were the king of the world. You're doing amazing things. And then you, like millions of other people, got sideswiped by '08. And so I know we're going to dive into some rough memories here, but I really appreciate you sharing with us, because I think there's a lot that people have that they can, a lot that you have that people can learn from.
So one of the reasons I'm nervous about doing a podcast is because I fell very publicly. Let me go back to about 2005.
Okay.
I used to teach wealth strategies on a nationally syndicated radio program, Christian Radio, KPDQ here in Portland. Between that, we were syndicated to about 6 other stations. Generally speaking, 500,000 people listening to my dulcet tones every week. And that's how I got a lot of my investment capital back then, right? It was a pretty effective way to do it. In 2005, I go through a really public divorce here in the Portland area, and I had to kind of tally up all my assets, and I ended up with something close to $56 million in assets. So I sold everything here, sold my book of business here. They were all exclusively single-family res. So I took that, and I went to Spartanburg, South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, and a little bit into Charlotte. And here in Portland, we were buying houses for $200,000 at the time. Down in Spartanburg, we were buying houses for $25,000. Wow. Like, it was just this massive multiplier. And so between 2004, 5, 6, and 7, we were buying or selling a house a day for like 500 days in a row. I lost count. But there was either a buy or a sell transaction every business day for 500 days. It was stunning how fast we were moving, how quick we were moving. I had a bunch of partners, right? And this person was a capital, and this person was a capital, and so I had this large pool of people, and yeah, and because of the radio exposure, I had what seemed to at the time an endless supply of capital and investors. So it was this kind of combination sandwiched between my knowledge and their capital and willing to partner. So I was 50-50 on, at the time, 429 doors.
So when you guys were doing a house a day, was that just on a wholesaling side, or were we doing fix and flips? Like, what were you doing?
Yeah, fix and flips.
Wow.
We'd buy a house for $25,000, put 15 to 25 into it, and sell it for 70 and 75. And because we got all of our capital, right, we would carry the contract on some of those notes. I mean, we'd set 3-year, 5-year balloons, but we would be the bank for a lot of our customers on the back end. So it was a cash machine.
Wow.
We had 70% LTV on everything we had or less, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so so when you have 300 single family res doors, you start creating problems that are really, really problems.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple of fatalities. I had one staff member whose only job was to deal with the insurances, with fires, with theft. We would lose an HVAC system every month, sometimes twice a month.
Jeez.
Like I would walk into a house we just spent $25,000 on, and 3 weeks later, I'd get a call. Somebody had taken a claw hammer to the piping and stolen all the copper and the piping and cable wiring. I mean, it was just this endless nightmare of problems. I mean, 90% of them were great, but the 10% that were problematic were gobbling resources.
Yeah.
And then Hunter talks about his last straw moment.
Mm-hmm.
I put in an HVAC system, $5,000, and in Spartanburg, you literally have to put your HVACs inside a steel or metal cage and cement it to the ground.
Gosh.
Right? $25,000 house, $5,000 HVAC system sitting outside.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The math is bonkers to me. I mean,
Wow.
it's still weird to me. But yeah, I put in an HVAC and somebody stole it within like 3 days.
Wow.
Like,
That's brutal.
so I met with another investor out there who ended up owning a 13-story apartment building. Just the quintessential, typical South Carolina good old boy, right? I cannot paint this picture more stereotypical. Like, oh, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, right? I'm Portland, right? And this guy is old school South Carolina.
Yeah.
It is a different world. But he had this building. He was in his mid to late 70s when I bought it. He and his two siblings, were squabbling every day about this. His father had literally built it and then passed it on to the 3 kids, and they were always bickering about something with the building. And I think by the time I got into it, they were in the middle of a 5-year lawsuit, like 2 brothers and a sister.
Did you buy the building?
I did. So I bought, so this was off market. So this is a 13-story apartment building, 113 units. I'm trying to remember. And I got it for $3.3 million. Like, to build it now would be $25 million just to build it.
Wow.
It was a pretty cool deal. I was pretty happy about it. It was my crown jewel. Mind you, we'd had all this cash and we were doing all these transactions and we were just taking buckets of money from this pile and buying more assets over here. So we were never really cash heavy. We were always cash investment. We were property heavy and cash light. And so late 2007, I met Pat. He was the seller of that property. And it took us about 9 months to close. It took us, I always joke about this, 5 attorneys, 4 sellers, 3 loan companies, and a title company. I mean, it was a really, really tough transaction because there were lawsuits around the building. I had to negotiate all this stuff with everybody.
Wow.
And the one lender right, that wanted to kind of see through this was Lehman Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was, I mean, at the time, so we closed in March of '08. I can tell you the exact day, March 26th, right? Coming up on my umpteenth anniversary.
Yep.
Uh, so March 26th, 2008, we closed. It was beautiful. I was like popping champagne, taking my wife out to dinner. Like it was a moment. I was golden. At that moment, we had $77 million in assets. We bought a $3 million building that we were going to put $6 million in to renovate, turn it into condos, and make $3 million net profit. Like after everybody, I'm 44. I'm 44 years old. I am on top of my game. I am the smartest guy in the room. Just ask me, right? The ego on me was
Yeah.
so big that it wouldn't fit through the door,
Wow.
right? I thought I knew everything. Um, I bought my first house at 19. So I've been just kind of building and building and building and building. And I thought I knew something.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got the building, this is called the Schuyler Building. It's very beautiful now, just to so I went to the architects and I walked out of escrow with like $962,000, right? It was the biggest escrow check I'd ever gotten. And I was going to do a major renovation on this. So I was going to use some of the cash and I was going to pay off some of our investors, right? Cash them out. And then uh, we were getting a $1 million a month tranche from Lehman, right? So we went through the first couple of months, did the mass eviction. Everybody goes for a little bit. We're doing floor by floor. We did the roof, right? $200-ish thousand for a roof. And then somewhere in early August or late July, because I was on vacation when it happened, one of the first big banks fell. And they didn't all the way fall, but you saw their stock price plummet, and there was something going on, but I didn't pay any attention to it. And we were doing a major construction, right? Doors off, windows off, roof done, and then all of a sudden, Lehman stopped returning phone calls.
Wow.
Like, dude, what's going on? Like, I have pallets of windows on the ground, waiting for installation. Like, this is just sitting there. We're talking 350 in those days, $350,000 worth of glass just sitting on the side in the parking lot. Do you have any idea how nerve-wracking it can be to have $300,000 worth of windows sitting on the ground? Like,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, all you need is a car and to just, I mean,
Yeah.
liability would have been disastrous. Anyway, nerve-wracking.
So what happened with the building? I mean, they stopped returning your phone calls, and they were
Yeah.
giving $1 million a month, and then
September
you shut it
rolled
down.
around and nothing. September rolled around and there was zero contact.
Wow.
I didn't have the slightest idea what to do. I didn't know who to talk to. There were just nobody. And like, okay, so do I pay my mortgage? Right? Because at this time, everything's in flux. You don't really know what's happening. So I'm making my mortgage payments and like, I hope I'm doing the right thing. And then like 30, 45 days later, it was very, very quickly in my recollection, we went into receivership, right? There was just like, hey, this is our asset. Like, no, right? I mean, there was no middle ground. And I'm living in Portland, right? I'm living in Vancouver. This is my home. My business partner at the time, they stayed in the property. I think they left in early spring of '09. They just left. I've never heard a single word from them ever since.
From your business partner.
From my business partner. I
Whoa.
helped put the deal together. They were on the loan and I was 50-50 partner with them. And somewhere in early January, February, they just left. They said, "Hey, John, we quit." Like, that's the email. I could have it framed. I should have it framed. It is so bleak and so, yeah. I mean, I
So
didn't,
you never stopped making any mortgage payments, but you just got a notice that it went into receivership.
yeah, I didn't know what to do. Like,
Wow.
I'm living here. The building is 2,000 miles, 2,500 miles away. The people that were in partnership with me to do this,
Hmm.
they just abandoned it.
So, wow. So, okay. So fast forward a few months or whatever the time frame is, you had $77 million worth of assets. This $13 million building goes into receivership. How did the rest of the dominoes fall? What happened?
So the mortgage, the mortgage was in excess of $90,000. We had roughly whatever it is, 113 minus 429. So we had 316 single family res properties that we still had, right? So we still limped along, but you know that whole crash, right? It didn't just impact banking, it hit the auto industry too, right? There's a 1 million square foot uh, BMW factory in Spartanburg, right? There's a half million square foot Michelin factory in Spartanburg, right? So the Rust Belt from the Great Lakes region moved down into the Southeast 25, 35 years ago. All of a sudden, my entire portfolio of properties, half of them work in the auto industry
Mm.
at like BMW. So I started out with like 30% equities in everything that I had. I was in fairly decent shape, but now I'm responsible for all these underlying mortgages, right? Because we had done owner contracts, not signed them away, not gotten new financing on all these houses. I'm responsible for all those
Mhm.
contracts. So even though XYZ person was paying their mortgage to me, their land sale contract to me, I didn't have the capacity to pay all the mortgages on the underlying contracts. And you get a 30% vacancy factor, right? People who can't pay because their job is no longer there. You can't kick them out because they technically have rights to ownership. It's me who screwed the pooch. I should have just sold that property, XYZ property, instead of having an owner contract on it, right? Because I still had the mortgage obligation. So it didn't matter that Mr. and Mrs. Brown were paying their mortgage on time to me, right? It's against the law to keep those monies. I can't spend them. So yeah, I folded.
Wow. So they're just like one by one, you all those houses went back to the bank?
Yeah.
Wow.
I systematically put about 2,000 people homeless in the course of 9 months.
Well, you can't keep that all on your shoulders. I mean, that was happening everywhere, right? And it's crazy. Like we all talk about having 2020 hindsight and like, wow, how could I not have, I could have done this differently, or how could I not have seen that, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, that was a really, really tough time to go through. And now maybe we can fast forward another 15 years, and here we are recording this in March of 2023. And I know you've gotten back on the horse and doing real estate again, but definitely a lot more experienced now. And I guess some questions, kind of comparing today's market versus, 08, 09. Do you see any parallels or anything that's got you really nervous right now that you're looking at?
There are thousands of parallels. I mean, just look at the two banks that just collapsed, right?
Hmm.
Lots and lots of parallels. Um, there are some similarities, but there are also some differences. I feel like, based on my research, it's a spectacular time to buy right now.
Hmm.
If you have cash, right? If you have the assets, I mean, God help us if you're in the bond market right now, right? Um, if you have capital that's deployable, right now is probably the best time in a decade to go buy real estate. I'm already seeing prices drop across the board. Just in the last quarter, we've seen a 2% price drop in every house in the Portland region.
Hmm.
Every single family res, every apartment building, everything has had a 2% drop in just 3 months.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
yeah.
crazy. So I was running a business in '08,
Okay.
and a decent sized company. I think probably at that time we might have had, I don't know, 40 employees or something like that. But what I learned was that cash was king to get us through '08, right? It really helped that we had cash. We focused on the customers. We did some pivoting with what our offerings were, and overall, like we did really well, considering. But what's different now, from my perspective, you still have the adage cash is king, but it's a little different flavor when inflation is running at 8% or a lot higher, depending on how you calculate it, right? I mean, if you go back to the way they calculated it back in the 80s, we're closer to 20% inflation, right? But they swap out the goods and the way they calculate it, right? And we
Yeah,
could
yeah.
debate whether they're doing some funny business behind the scenes, but they swap out different things that make up what that inflation index is. And so now that the idea that, okay, cash is king in a recession is kind of like tried and true, but it's a different animal when inflation is running as high as it is. So for me, like there's always, like you said, there's some parallels to the last crash, but there's also some differences right now. And you and I are similar in the regard that we're both pretty bullish on real estate right now, right? Like I'm doing a deal right now, and we literally got a 20% discount off the asking price, like 22% discount off the asking price because of what's been happening in the market. And we would have never gotten that 6 months ago. And it's a phenomenal time to get those sort of discounts because of the environment we're in, but at the same time, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. So I'm with you. I'm still buying right now. I think there are some good deals to be had, but you do need to keep your eyes on the economic horizon and some of these headwinds that we're heading into.
I think there's, oh, well, to your point, we just picked up two different properties in escrow right now. There's a University of Eastern Washington, right? Small school, but small, stable and economic environment. We got a 1.2 million asking price, 1.1 purchase price, and there's a good likelihood once we get the due diligence that we're going to knock off another 10% off that. So we'll get a 20% reduction just from our efforts on this property. And this property should have sold, should have been listed for 1.5 empty. Empty. It's an empty student housing, and it should have sold for 1.5. But just because they're so in this particular case, the seller refinanced it with a adjustable rate, right? They didn't put a rate lock on. 2 years ago, they went through a refi. They got these beautiful rates, but they didn't put a rate lock on. And yeah, they have to sell fast.
Wow.
It's the fastest closing I've ever had to do.
Wow.
Uh, like it's 45-day close. Like it's
Yeah.
a fast one because they're panicked. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're
definitely some opportunities there. So maybe shifting gears a little bit, as you briefly mentioned, you're raising some money. You got these two properties under contract right now. One of the things that you and I have in common is the love for the outdoors and hiking.
my
And
mistake.
yeah,
It's
yeah, Penn
yeah,
State.
it's my fidget, but I always have my bent steak with me.
Yeah. So I maybe you want to spend a little bit of time talking about who your avatar is,
Yeah.
what your affinity is with that, and what you're hoping to do with your new company here.
So I losing $80 million, you kind of have a lot to think about, right? Just like putting all the cards on the table. I stood at the top of this Skylar building at least a half a dozen times contemplating my own death,
Wow.
right? Because it was bad for me, right? This gigantic ego. And what I've come to learn is that my net worth equaled my self worth,
Hmm.
right? It was the bigger the wallet, the bigger the brain.
Dangerous trap.
Holy cow. And so fast forward 15 years, it took me a lot of soul searching to get like right with all that. And so about 2 years ago, I ended up starting to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, right? The PCT. Um, I love it. I am hiker trash through and through. Right? Like, I get hiker trash, and that's a euphemism for all the hikers, through hikers, whether you're AT Pacific Crest Trail or the AZ, all of the through hikers, we all are lovingly referred to as hiker trash. Um, because we look just so pitiful on the side of the road.
Yeah, yeah.
But I love
Okay,
hiking. I love backpacking. I'm on the trail literally every weekend somewhere.
cool. Well,
Yeah.
and you brought up an interesting point in one of our earlier conversations. You mentioned like, hey, Chad, these through hikers, like they're really good at planning. They gotta have money to do what they want to do. They've got to have
Yeah.
a good job to get there, and then they need to have the flexibility to take the time off. So they have to be like pretty well appreciated at the business to allow them to take the time off, and
Yeah.
sometimes 6 months at a time. So well, you got me thinking like, wow, you know what? You're right. The hikers, can really be really good investors. You and I can certainly relate to them. I mean, I hiked the John Muir Trail. It was a
Yeah.
22-day hike, and then interesting,
How long did that hike take? How long did you do it?
22 days, and it was 220 miles of hiking and over 60,000 feet
Yeah.
of ascent. Because we
Yeah.
did a lot of peak bagging along the way, so we added extra. Like, oh, that peak looks
Hard
amazing.
trail.
And so 60,000 feet of climbing. I mean, it was a lot. I lost quite a bit of weight on that trip, but it was amazing, right? It was amazing backcountry. But shortly after I shared that story with you about hikers being your avatar, literally that next weekend, I ran into a fellow investor of mine on the trail on a Sunday, and he'd invested $300,000 with me in two different deals.
Yeah.
And I barely recognized him. He had a hat on, and I had a hat. I had a baby here, a baby there. I was with three kids, right? Like I walked by him, but his voice caught me, right? And then I said, "Is that you?" And then he caught me like, "Oh my gosh, Chad, I can't believe you're out here." So we had like a great 10-minute conversation on the trail, and it got me thinking, you know what? I said, John's right. The
Yeah.
hikers can be real, and even outdoor enthusiasts can be great investors. And I just thought that was very serendipitous that I ran into him the week after you and I were talking about that.
I think I mean, these people, so my best friend is on the trail right now. He is 33. He just turned 33 this week. He's 33 years old. He has 150,000 in the bank. He is retired
Mm-hmm.
at 33. He's good. He's totally golden. His wife works really well. he's a stay-at-home dad now. Like he quit his job 2 months ago, and he's on the trail right now. He's spending 6 months, and he's having the time of his life.
Yeah.
And that clientele, the person who's really after that time freedom, right? I want to spend time in the national park. I want to go whale watching. I want to go camping. Those are pursuits that you got to have a little bit of reserves for in order to do. If you take 6 months to take a walk on it, if you take 22 days, right? Your gear alone is $2,000.
Yeah.
I mean, so that customer, that adventure-seeking customer, the freedom in your back sign, right?
Yeah.
That person who wants that time freedom is, I think, I would resonate well with them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
I,
Cool.
you and I have joked about the blue blazer, blue shirt, tan shoe guys, right? This community is full of the blue blazers guys, right?
Yeah.
I kind of want to set myself apart, and I think, I mean, your story of meeting your investor, I think it's really poignant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did shortly after that. I did, and this is real recent. I mean, this may have happened like a month ago, and then 2 weeks after we did that hike, I did a celebration investor dinner for investors in one of my projects in Jacksonville, and he was there. And what was he talking to me about? You know, about hiking. Hey, Chad, you did any hiking lately? The rains are doing really good. And he started telling me about a spot he went to, and it's like instantly we've got this connection that's just beyond investing. And it was just really cool that even like at the investor dinner, you know, kind of a fancy steakhouse we went to, he wanted to talk to me about hiking and where am I headed next.
Yeah, I mean, hiking is universal. It's rich or poor, it doesn't matter. I mean, another really, really close friend of mine is dirt poor, professional hobo level, right? Really not financially set, but I mean, he loves hiking.
Yeah.
He's just, I mean, so it really, I think that mindset of freedom really resonates with a lot of people. Like, just, yeah, my wife is a teacher. She wants to go out hiking, right? Everybody wants to go. America is a beautiful place.
Yeah.
It's just stunning. And I
Love to
think,
explore.
yeah. So what else do you like to hike? Where else do you like to go?
Well, I mean, I tend to do more local stuff now. I've done a lot of backpacking in the Sierras back when
Yeah.
I didn't have as many kids. I got 5 kids now, so they keep me pretty busy here. But I take them hiking a lot, so we do a ton of like day trips,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of mountains around LA, so we pick different spots, and there's even some seasonal waterfalls we get to go visit. There's some caves, and
Do you ever go up San Jacinto? Like, so San Bernardino is here,
yeah,
right? We've got Mount
yeah.
Baldy and San Jacinto and those.
Yep. I've been up there. Yeah, Baldy, I've done quite a bit of training on when I was getting ready for Rainier and Mount
Did you do
Shasta.
Rainier? Did you really?
Yeah, I did Rainier. I've done Whitney 6 times, if you can believe that. Uh,
Seriously?
yeah, so
Wow.
yeah, Mount Shasta, Mount Shuckson, a lot in the Cascades, mountaineering.
Yeah.
I've done a lot, but
Yeah.
now it tends to be more like day hikes.
Okay.
Uh, and I try to get out with the kids and get them involved, and they love it. So it's good.
Nice.
But a question for you before I let you
Yeah.
go here, John. So going back to the investment side, the real estate side, after what you learned in '08 and kind of what you're experiencing now here in 2023, what kind of advice or suggestions would you give to investors that are thinking about investing? They maybe have done a lot of investments over the years, so a more seasoned type person that's kind of seen the
Yeah.
cycles.
Yeah.
What sort of investment advice would you give them with respect to real estate in today's market, knowing what you know through the cycles?
So due diligence is always kind of this benchmark, right? But it's not really going to, I hate to say this, I know of $200 million worth of deals that are going sideways right now.
Mm,
Like right now, this very minute.
Wow.
And due diligence isn't going to save you. Cash will save you. I'm doing so in my earlier example, Skylar, we were 70% on everything, our whole portfolio. And I'm going 50% LTV this time. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna let a bank take my property again. Like, I worked too hard to get back. Uh, Cash is the only thing that, if you don't have a mortgage, guess what? The bank can't take it. I mean, I know that's a big secret, but if you don't have a mortgage, you can ride out any storm.
Yeah.
Our goal is to have zero debt on every property we have. That's my bottom line. Like, there's a graphic running around that in most multifamilies, the operator gets 9% of every dollar of rent check, and the lender gets 38%. So if you eliminate the lender, guess what? Your returns are higher.
Yeah.
So that's my advice. I know it's hard to do. Having an all cash transaction is pretty tough,
Yeah.
but that is my goal, and that's my best advice.
Cool. Okay.
I'm super safe. I will never let a bank take my property again.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's
All
a
right.
one.
And I love it. So, and if people wanted to learn more about you or find out how to get in touch with you, what's the best way for that?
So ratracerescue.net. Super cheesy, just like me, right? Not apologizing for it. I kind of think it's pretty perfect for me.
Yeah.
Ratracerescue.net.
Cool. Well,
Uh,
with all these layoffs coming up, I think
yeah.
there's going to be needed to be some rescuing. So we'll be able to remember that name for sure.
401k guys, like if you got 401ks and you get laid off, that would be a really good customer for us, right? If you've got this 401k rollover that needs to be placed somewhere. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put that in the show notes. Really appreciate you coming on board, John, and I've enjoyed getting to know you through the Raise Masters group. And just thanks so much for sharing your experience, your wisdom, and everything else. We really appreciate it.
Chad, honest to God, I'm still nervous. I'm still sweating, but it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. This is my first. I'm going to just like, woo. This is my first podcast. So,
Cool.
yeah, cool, man. Thank you. I
All right.
appreciate
Well,
it.
thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I love hearing John's story, how he was able to build his portfolio up to $80 million, lose it all, and now he's back in real estate. And despite the craziness that we're going through in 2023, he's back into real estate, loves it, and he's super bullish on it. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the show and comment below. Let us know what you think.